vision and pay me. It's never this way. We indigenous, maybe we winning this crazy. Opportunity, your opportunity, your opportunity, your opportunity. This your opportunity, your opportunity.
Welcome to EDI on the Street, where we discuss all things EDI and supply chain.
Good to be here.
Today, we're really diving into something critical. We've been looking at industry observations, and, well, we put together a white paper recently on this. We're talking about predatory EDI providers.
Yeah, it's a topic that keeps coming up because we see it causing real pain for businesses, especially small and medium-sized ones.
Yeah.
You know, businesses like yours listening right now.
Exactly. EDI, at its core, was meant to simplify things, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Make business easier. Smooth, seamless exchange of, purchase orders, invoices, ASNs, all that essential stuff. It's supposed to be the foundation for streamlined operations, better productivity.
The cornerstone of modern commerce, really.
Right. But for so many SMBs, instead of being this great efficiency tool, it turns into this source of stress, confusion, and honestly, unexpected costs that just seem to spiral.
It's a tangled mess sometimes.
It really can be. And look, we've been watching this pattern for the last decade? We've gathered these experiences, these common threads, and that's what fed into the white paper. And
it's important to say this isn't about pointing fingers at one specific company.
No, not at all. It's about identifying these detrimental practices that we see hurting SMBs across the board, things that just aren't right.
Okay, so let's get right to it then. Yeah. What's the root cause here? Why does this happen?
Well, fundamentally, it often boils down to an imbalance of power.
How so?
Think about it. If one EDI provider controls that crucial link to your biggest customer, maybe it's a huge retailer you simply have to trade with, suddenly they hold all the cards.
Right. Your ability to negotiate terms or even just threaten to walk away, it vanishes.
Pretty much. You have very little leverage. Now, a large enterprise, they might have a whole procurement team. They have scale. They can push back.
They can negotiate.
Exactly. But a small or medium-sized business, they're often much more vulnerable. And unfortunately, that makes them potential targets for providers whose business model, frankly, seems geared more towards maximizing profit extraction than actually facilitating smooth trade.
Even if it means using practices that are, predatory.
Precisely. And these aren't just vague feelings. These predatory behaviors manifest in very specific ways that we see again and again.
Okay, so let's break that down. What does this actually look like for a business owner who might be experiencing it?
One of the big ones, highlighted in our research in the paper, is establishing what feels like monopolistic control.
And that's more than just being popular or having a lot of customers, right?
Oh, yeah. It's about how they use that dominant position, dictating terms, making it hard for competitors to even get a foot in the door.
How do they do that? Suppress competition?
Well, one classic tactic is creating really high barriers to entry. Think about exorbitant testing fees.
Ah, the testing fees.
Yeah. To connect with a major trading partner through their platform, you, or maybe another provider you'd prefer, might have to pay thousands of dollars just for the testing process.
So right away, that limits your choices. It pushes you towards the incumbent.
Exactly. It locks you in before you've even really started. And then there are the contracts themselves, often designed for what we call vendor captivity.
Meaning they make it incredibly difficult or expensive or both to actually leave.
Right. You start looking at the implications. Potential retesting fees with all your partners if you switch, trying to get your historical transaction data out of their proprietary system. Good luck with that sometime.
And just the operational headache of retraining your team on a whole new system.
It's a powerful combination. Psychological lock-in, practical lock-in. And often SMBs just don't have, a dedicated IT person with days to spend dissecting a 30-page contract filled with legalese.
So they sign, maybe not fully realizing what they're getting into until it's too late.
That's often the case. The trap is sprung, and then guess what often happens next?
The fees start creeping up.
You got it. Once you're captured, that lack of bargaining power gets exploited with, let's just say, creative and excessive charges.
And we're not talking about just the basic cost of sending a document.
No. We see inflated setup fees, sometimes really confusing transaction charges, those painful testing fees we mentioned, and then extra costs for things that honestly should be standard, like getting decent customer support or necessary system updates.
It gets really frustrating. I was talking to one company recently. They were paying $600 a month just for maintenance on an old system, van-based.
Wow. Just maintenance.
Just to keep the lights on. This wasn't including any actual support calls, no mapping changes, nothing. Just $600 a month down the drain for a system that was barely doing the minimum.
That's painful. Or how about those clauses you sometimes find buried deep in the contract? The ones that say you'll be billed for enhancements or system upgrades.
Whether you asked for them or not.
Exactly. Whether you needed them, whether you even knew they happened. It's coercive. It feels like a way to just pad the bill, hoping you won't notice or question it.
And then there's that stealth toll booth idea we identified. Charging per transaction line item.
Yeah. That one's particularly nasty.
It's not just one charge for sending, say, a purchase order. It's a charge for every single line on that PO. So if you get an order with 50 different products...
That's 50 charges instead of one.
Yeah.
It feels engineered specifically to massively inflate the cost for anyone dealing with detailed orders or invoices.
It puts this invisible compounding tax on your entire supply chain, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Your costs become unpredictable. They can explode as your business grows or as your orders get more complex, punishing you for success, basically.
So while they're collecting all these fees, often in opaque ways, what's the actual user experience like? What about support?
Well, this is another area where the predatory model often shows its colors. The source material and our own observations consistently point towards minimal support.
Slow response times.
Very slow. Or you get these generic canned responses that, don't actually solve your specific problem. You end up chasing them for days.
Which brings us to another huge red flag. A fundamental lack of transparency.
Bingo. This is key. Predatory providers often seem to deliberately obscure their pricing structures. The contracts are dense. The fee schedules are hard to find or understand.
So you're left kind of guessing what you're actually paying for each month.
And how can you possibly evaluate if it's fair or compare it meaningfully to another provider's offer? You can't compare apples to apples if one apple is, hidden inside a locked box.
It completely undermines trust.
Totally. And leaves you wide open to those surprise costs and hidden fees popping up later. It's a tactic. It's designed to prevent you from making a truly informed decision or realizing you're being overcharged until you're already deeply entangled.
Okay, so we've painted a picture of what these practices look like. Let's really hammer home why this matters so much. What's the real tangible impact on your business if you're stuck in this situation?
Oh, the effects are profound. And they ripple outwards, especially for SMBs who, let's face it, usually have thinner margins and less capacity to absorb these kinds of hits.
So, first off, the financial strain. It's obvious, but needs stating.
Direct hit to the bottom line. Those excessive fees, those opaque charges, that's money that could be going into growing your business. Research and development, marketing, hiring good people, improving your actual product or service.
Instead, it's just being siphoned off by the EDI provider.
Right, limiting your potential. And because you have so little leverage, you often feel forced to just accept these unfavorable terms to keep trading with those key partners. It perpetuates this cycle of financial vulnerability.
We talked about that example, the small food manufacturer trying to get into big box retail.
Yeah, a classic scenario. They have to do EDI to play in that league. They sign up, maybe thinking the initial quote looks okay, standard cost of doing business.
But then a few months down the line,
suddenly, they're looking at bills for, say, $2,000 a month, just to keep the orders flowing. They're locked into specific data formats, complex mapping rules, billing structures that just don't align with their actual needs or their budget.
it becomes a sunk cost trap, doesn't it?
Exactly that. You think, well, we've already invested so much time, money, and sheer frustration into getting this set up. Leaving feels overwhelming. Even if the current situation is clearly bleeding you dry month after month, it becomes this operational tax you just sort of endure.
And it's not just the money, is it? There are huge operational impacts, too.
Massive disruptions. That minimal support we talked about, poor service quality, systems going down unexpectedly. These aren't just small annoyances when EDI is critical to your order flow.
They halt your business.
Pretty much. As we noted, you get slow resolutions, those unhelpful canned responses. What does that translate to in the real world? Delays processing vital orders, errors in shipments because data isn't flowing correctly, missed sales opportunities because you couldn't fulfill demand on time.
And friction, right. Trying to onboard a new important trading partner becomes this huge, painful project instead of a smooth process.
Yeah, your whole supply chain efficiency can just grind to a halt because the EDI piece is unreliable or poorly supported.
And then there's the longer-term strategic impact.
This is maybe the most insidious part. Being locked into these restrictive contracts, being overly dependent on one provider whose system might be outdated or inflexible, it actively stifles your ability to innovate, adapt, and grow.
It limits your future choices.
Definitely. It can prevent true digital transformation. Maybe you want to integrate your EDI data seamlessly with a new CRM or an upgraded ERP system. If your provider uses proprietary formats or makes integration difficult and costly, you're stuck.
So innovation gets squashed.
It really does. And for an SMB trying to scale up, this lack of flexibility is crippling. You can't easily explore alternative solutions. You can't leverage newer, more efficient technologies. You're not just stuck operationally today. Options for the future are limited.
Wow. Okay. So putting all this together leads to, I think, the most crucial question for anyone listening. How do you actually know if your provider falls into this predatory category?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Let's lay out some practical warning signs, things you can ask yourself based on what we've seen.
All right. Litmus test time.
First one, are you genuinely afraid to even think about switching providers? Does the thought fill you with a sense of dread, anticipating huge costs, massive disruption, data migration nightmares?
If that fear is palpable, that's a huge red flag, right? That signals vendor lock-in.
Absolutely. Second, look at your monthly invoice. Do you truly, honestly understand everything you are being charged for? Is it clearly itemized? Can you explain why the cost goes up or down each month?
If you can't get a clear, simple explanation from them or figure it out yourself, that points to that lack of transparency we talked about.
Right. Third, think about making changes. Can you handle relatively standard tasks like, say, updating a map for an existing trading partner or adding a new document type? Or are you forced to go through their support team, often with extra fees attached, for every little thing?
A good provider should empower you to manage your own setup to a reasonable degree.
Exactly. They shouldn't make you dependent on them for every minor adjustment. And fourth, when you actually do need help, when something breaks or you have a time-sensitive question, how quickly do you get a real helpful answer?
Are we talking minutes, hours, or days? You have to keep chasing, escalating, just to get someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah. Consistently slow, unhelpful, minimal support is a classic sign of a provider who doesn't really prioritize your operational success once they've got your contract signed.
So if you're listening and nodding along to these points,
Yeah.
you can't confidently say, yes, I understand my bill. Yes, I can make changes. Yes, support is responsive. No, I'm not afraid to switch.
Then unfortunately, there's a very good chance you're dealing with a provider whose practices lean towards the predatory side.
Okay, but let's pivot slightly. It's not all doom and gloom out there, is it?
No, definitely not. And this is important. Not all EDI providers operate this way. There are good actors out there. Providers who offer transparent pricing, often with flexible month-to-month contracts. Providers who build their solutions on open standards designed for interoperability, not entrapment.
So alternatives exist. What's the first step for a business that suspects they're in a bad situation?
Knowledge is power, really. It starts with being informed and asking the right questions before you sign anything, or even if you're reevaluating your current setup.
Like what specifically?
Be direct. Ask, what are all the potential fees? Setup, transaction per kilocharacter, testing, support tiers, maintenance, cancellation fees. Get it all in writing. Ask, what are the exact terms for ending this contract? Can I leave easily? Critically, can I get my data out easily and in a usable format if I decide to move?
And if the provider gets cagey or give vague answers?
That's your answer right there. Evasiveness or an inability to provide clear, upfront information is a massive warning sign. Run, don't walk.
On a bigger picture level, are things changing at all? Is there any movement systemically?
We are starting to see some shifts, yeah. It's slow, but regulators are beginning to pay more attention to things like SaaS monopolies and potentially unfair contract terms that create excessive lock-in. There's a growing awareness, I think, of how critical these digital platforms are and the potential for abuse.
And within the industry itself.
We're also seeing some positive signs there. Alliances forming, sometimes driven by large retailers, working with their supplier communities, demanding more flexibility, more fairness, systems that benefit everyone in the chain, not just the middleman charging tolls.
And the technology is moving forward too, right?
Absolutely. The future of EDI isn't just about sending the same old files faster. It's moving towards true interoperability. Things like cloud-native platforms, API gateways. Think of APIs as modern, flexible, digital handshakes that let different systems talk to each other directly and easily.
Solutions built to integrate and empower, not to trap you in a silo.
That's the goal. A truly valuable provider shouldn't just be a pipe for your data. They should feel like a partner. helping you not just transmit data, but actually understand it, leverage it, integrate it into your wider business intelligence.
If they're not helping you understand your own business data better, they're failing you.
Fundamentally, yes. So, okay, what can you, the listener, do right now if you suspect a problem?
Take action. Don't just accept the status quo because it feels too hard to change.
First, benchmark. Try to find out what other companies like yours in your industry are paying for similar EDI services. Are your costs way out of line? Second, get competing quotes. Reach out to other vendors. Even just the process of getting quotes could be illuminating.
Transparency really does act like a disinfectant, doesn't it? When you start asking detailed questions and comparing offers, predatory pricing and terms tend to stand out.
Exactly. And look, many providers, including us here at GraceBlood, we offer free assessments. No strings attached, no pressure to switch.
What does that involve?
It's really about education. We'll look at your current setup, your bills, your pain points, help you identify those red flags we've been discussing, and just show you what alternatives look like, what fair pricing looks like, what good support feels like.
Giving people the information they need to make an informed choice.
That's it. Because the ultimate goal here should be growth and success for the entire ecosystem, supporting the startups, the regional suppliers, the innovators who are trying to compete, not just protecting the entrenched positions of a few legacy players.
EDI can be fantastic. It should be empowering.
It absolutely should be when providers operate ethically and actually respect their clients and their client success.
So just to recap then, we've really dug into the challenges that predatory EDI providers pose today. We've talked about the hidden fees, the deliberate lock-in tactics,
And the very real damage this does to your finances, your daily operations, and ultimately your ability to grow and adapt in the long run.
keep those red flags top of mind. That lack of transparency, those overly restrictive contracts, and support that's consistently slow or unhelpful.
But please remember, you're not powerless here. There is hope. There are concrete actions you can take.
Ask those tough, informed questions. Actively look for providers who champion transparency and flexibility. Don't be afraid to explore the alternatives out there.
Because ultimately, challenging these unfair practices takes a collective commitment. We need more fairness, more opportunity within the digital supply chain. By shining a light on these exploitative tactics and advocating for the interests of small and medium businesses, we can actually move towards a future where every company, big or small, can leverage EDI effectively and thrive.
And if you've been listening today and thinking, yeah, that sounds like my situation, if you're tired of dealing with what feels like a predatory provider, or even if you just want a clearer understanding of your current EDI setup and your options,
Please reach out. Speak to the experts here at GraceBlood. As we said, we offer those free assessments specifically to help you understand where you stand and what's possible.
absolutely. Thanks for joining us on EDI on the Street.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Until next time, stay smart, stay scalable, and stay ethical. And maybe take a moment to think, are your technology partners genuinely helping you grow, or are they perhaps subtly holding you back?
Your opportunity, your opportunity, your opportunity, it's your opportunity, your opportunity, your opportunity, your opportunity, it's your opportunity, your opportunity.